Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your media and tech-related production questions every single day. Courtney Gooden in Los Angeles is our reader today. Courtney, what's our first question?
All right, Bill. First one comes in from Andy Kokendorfer from Vieira, Florida. He asked, what gear would you take to cover protest for a news organization? How timely a question.
We're going to start with Chris Fenwick this morning. Chris is back after a while being gone. Good to have you back, Chris.
I think the real question, Andy, is are you protesting the news organization, or are you just protesting something and you're being hired by the news organization? I would, in 2025, I would take a phone. Unless I was hired by the news agency, and then I'd take whatever it is they tell me to take. But I think the phone is the production weapon of choice for me. Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, I think if you're in a foreign country where there may be laws against, if there's a authoritarian country where they seize news cameras and confiscate, then a phone comes in handy, because then you look like a tourist that's taking pictures of the street. But if you're actually working for a news organization and you're assigned to cover protests or some type of social upheaval, take a press pass, take a vest that says press on it. Identify yourself as a member of the press so that you don't get involved with the constabulary doesn't arrest you for being one of the protesters. Take a rain cover for your camera, because there's a lot of stuff that's squirted and flying through the air. It'll help protect the camera from damage. And take several bottles of water to stay hydrated and to wash your eyes out. Take a mask for, things that gas that may be floating through the air to quell the riot. Let's see, what else? That's, I think, your basic, and carry spare batteries. Everything to be self-sufficient for several hours, because you don't know if you're going to be able to get back to your car or place to unload your media or change batteries. So those are the basics.
Alex Lindsay.
What most news organizations are using now are phones. From a global perspective, so when we see coverage of these things, there are a handful of people going in with cameras. Obviously, there's helicopters that are flying over, but the folks on the ground, from what we've seen in the last 5 years, I used to have an office that was surrounded by European news agencies. It's all iPhones. 100%, all of them were using iPhones for what they were doing. And that was 5 years ago, before the 15 came out. So that was partially because of expense, but a big piece of it is it's much lower profile. So they just don't, it's not clear, it is not guaranteed that they're not going to be targets anymore. So they need to be able to just look like citizenry. They just need to know how to shoot. Now, a lot of them will have additional audio that might be little DJI mics, or some of them have Zoom recorders with some that can feed into their camera or into their phone. So if they're pulling someone aside for an interview, they can get a little bit more information, a little better audio than what their phone would pick up. But what we saw transition between 2012 and 2019, it was really over those 7 years, went from 4-camera crews with big broadcast cameras to phones, and it was almost 100% phones by 2019.
Courtney Gooden, you wanted to come back in?
Yeah, the other thing I was seeing, and I have a recent experience with this, like yesterday, I've seen a lot of, for the local stations that are covering all these stuff live, I've seen a lot of live views on people's backpacks. Yeah. So that's how the local stations are getting those signals out. They're not going to trust their phone, because, the police now have jammers that they can throw in there that they want to jam the phone signals. So the live view, you have a better chance to evade the particular signal that's being jammed if you've got multiple sources of connection. They can still get a signal out. And of course, they got the helicopters overhead, and microwave, but they're not using those microwave trucks as much as they used to. They're now going out there with live view backpacks to do their remote reporting with.
I have to admit, I'm kind of surprised that we haven't seen somebody just gather. There were so many feeds on TikTok, that were live. I was kind of surprised someone just didn't grab all those feeds and start to just compile them together to build a story, because there was probably, I don't know, over the weekend, there were probably 20 or 30 feeds that I went by without much work. of people going live from the location. So I think that people going live from their phones is going to be something that increases. Also, if you're a press organization, remember that Verizon and others, Verizon is the one we know the most about, but they have a high speed, you can buy into a high speed connection. So most people don't know that exists, but that will give you, from what I understand and what we actually saw at NAB, because they turned it on at NAB to kind of engage people to take a look at it. We saw 2 gigs per second to the phone over 5G.
Wow.
So this is what 5G always had, and this was something that they've always wanted to sell to news organizations. Is this is not sharing the same cellular connection as the rest of the world. You're paying a bunch of money for it. But what I don't know yet, and I'm researching it because I want to be able to do two-way, this little phone thing that I've been working on. I want to be able to do two-way with folks anywhere, but I need to get that high-speed, super high-speed connection. So we're researching. We'll let you know when we know how much it costs.
Chris Fenwick.
About the TikTok thing, Alex, I think I find it super interesting to watch just socially how when people these days get into confrontations and fights and protesting and whatever, that the phone just comes up. It just comes up like it's this badge of honor, or this, what was Captain America's shield?
It's a shield.
Yeah,
shield. There's only so much you can do when someone's streaming it. There's only so much you can do because grabbing their phone isn't going to help.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
I think one day we will look back on this era and it'll be discussed ad nauseum. It's a super interesting social behavior. I find it fascinating.
I do think it makes it really hard to act badly in public. Like it just
You've given this a lot of thought, have you?
Well, oh no, I watch it all the time. I watch a lot of the quote unquote Karens that get they do absurd things, and someone just picks up a phone and just goes, "Well, I'm just going to record this." like you're doing. Anytime you do something, I don't see enough crazy stuff because I don't go out enough, I think, but I think that I would be the same way if I saw someone doing something crazy. My first reaction would be, "Hey, I'm gonna record this because it's a crime. It's absurd. It's funny. It might get me on Daily Dose. All those things are possibilities." Yeah.
I think the next thing to invest in is consumer-based body cameras. I think that's going to be a thing.
People make them
where
now.
it's commonplace. Where it's like a piece of jewelry that maybe Bluetooths to your phone or something.
Or a pair of glasses, kind of like Google Glass.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
That didn't work out well.
If you count that, sure.
Guy Cochran, you had some thoughts?
Yeah, I do love the full-size cameras. One, because the lenses, you can whip right in with the zoom on these. So on these full-size cameras, the lenses that look like this, you have a manual or a servo-based zoom. So you can flip a switch down there and you can punch right in super fast, either manually or there's a button where your thumb is. And you can also see here, one of the benefits is that you have the viewfinder where the eyepiece, you can stick your head right up in there. So if it's really bright, you can still see. You also can throw like an arm on here and have light. You could also have Ionic Anton Bauer style batteries on the back and have lots of runtime. And then another thing, in this example, he is running a live view into the backpack, and there's also a lens hood on there. So there's a lot of reasons why we use these full size cameras. And then the other thing that I've seen that's popular is using a wireless shotgun mic. So they're putting a plug-on transmitter, and then they're able, if they are a solo shooter, they can get that mic closer to the subject without having to actually mic them up or hand off a microphone to them. So I've seen them just operating the camera with one and then putting the microphone up to them for these really fast shoots. The other thing with the live view is that you can upload your footage afterwards. So some people, I've seen this at different locations where they'll shoot something and then they'll send that feed up later from just playback. So they'll play out their 10 minutes of footage that they shot, and then they'll edit it up at the station, but they'll send out all their footage. So it's not live. It's live they'll shoot it and then upload it a little bit later within minutes though. So those are some of my thoughts.
Fascinating discussion. I'm sure we'll be talking about more of this as we go. Next question.
Comes in from Craig Kadoki in Toronto, Canada. What app on the iPad are you using to record multi-track audio greater than 2 channels? And what is the maximum number of channels you can record? I have a 48 by 48 USB interface.
Alex Lindsay, what is up?
I actually don't know what the maximum number is. I'm not sure if there is. There's got to be a maximum somewhere, but audio is a fairly simple thing to record from a recording perspective. So I don't know exactly what it is. I know that the Voyage, which is what I've been using, has its own app that will record 8 channels. So it's recording second order ambisonic, and I'm doing USB-C straight into the phone from a Voyage microphone, and I'm able to get 8 channels. I do believe that there's programs like Auria, Cubase, Logic, all should be able to see multiple channels, but I don't know what their maximum is.
And Final Cut for iPad is sending back 4 channels from phones. If you hook 4 phones to it, it'll ingest 4 audio-video feeds directly from iPhones via Bluetooth. Guy?
Yeah, I'm not big on this, but I did purchase the Cubase software when we were doing some stuff for our church, and I plugged it into the X32, and the channels popped up. I just can't recall how many it allowed with the USB connection.
So there are some options for you, Craig. Next question.
Next question comes in from Steve Holden in London, in England, in the UK. Can the panel suggest a controller that has the flexibility of the Streamdeck, but with better LCD buttons for confident operation?
Chris Fenwick, have you found a solution?
Well, I think Streamdeck themselves have released a new Streamdeck that has a new button, so maybe give that a... I always find this complaint about the Streamdeck button interesting. I've pushed buttons for a living for 4 decades. I've literally never had a problem except for software. Go ahead, Alex. You can make fun of me. With the Streamdeck buttons, I find them to be fine. And yet probably everybody here is going to say, "Oh no, they're awful." Blah blah. I think it's super interesting that people have such a big problem with them. But yes, Streamdeck has a new model that has a scissor button or whatever magic stuff things.
Guy Cochran?
Yeah, at the very high end, you'll be looking at Densitron. So Densitron is one of the manufacturers that you'll see in broadcast trucks, and those buttons, with the new buttons app from BitFocus, you can program some of those. The other popular manufacturer out there is X-Keys, and with something like Central Control, so this can be programmed for basically anything. So it depends on what you're trying to do, and do you need to actually see a visual? Do you want a button that you just label? Like, these are all keys that I had to actually pry out of here, every single one of these by hand, and put them where I wanted. And then there's different templates that you can get. But yeah, Central Control you could even use with an older NewTek controller that used to cost $10,000 you could pick up on eBay for $300 now, and with Central Control you could map that into vMix or Wirecast or a couple other different apps. So it just depends on what you want to do. But the tactile feel of some of these higher end buttons, I get what you're saying, because I used to have a playout where if I missed that button and it was a Streamdeck button, it could cost the client tens of thousands of dollars for a missed playout. So it was one of those things where the Streamdeck buttons definitely made me super nervous, but we pulled it off. No double punches. That's the scary thing, is when you push that button and it accidentally comes back. So you push it down and it shoots back right away. That's a double punch, and man, it is a sickening feeling when it happens.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, David Brady mentioned Scarhoy, which does have a lot of good stuff. Also, the one that has been around for a long time, of course, is JL Cooper. So this is a modular system here, this Eclipse system, and these are the kind of what I would say, the grown-up buttons with the grown-up sliders that are controllers for all kinds of different things. There's all kinds of interfaces. So JL Cooper makes those. They've been making them for a long time. If you ever are at NAB or IBC or anywhere that they have their booth, just play with those buttons and the faders a little bit, and you'll for a modular system that is designed to talk to other pieces of hardware, it's an entirely different level. Also a different level of price. So it depends on what you're willing to spend.
Don't forget the show is driven by your questions. If you'd like to put questions in, go to the Mukana system. That's our Q&A system. Start by going to officehours.global/join. We'll send you an email, and once you've filled that out and kind of gotten into the system, you can go directly into the question queue, ask questions, and most important, vote on those questions, because that determines our run of show and how much time we spend on each question. Next question.
Yep, and you can send them in via QR code, which is how the next question came in. Chester Sweeney from Las Vegas, Nevada. Does anyone own or have any experience with this? And he has a link to the Glowforge. And
Alex Lindsay's going to take this on. Alex?
No, we don't. But it looks really cool. So this is it's a small laser cutter. So if you look at this, it won't cut very deep, but basically it's for doing art projects. Now that there's more powerful ones, this is obviously start getting to $4,500 to $7,000 for ones that will cut through a lot more and has slightly larger area. And then you have kind of crafty lasers, which are $700 to $1,000. And these are designed if you want to basically etch things, if you want to cut through small pieces of wood for arts and crafts and building, even little signs and so on and so forth. These are cool little things. It's kind of the reverse. It's using a laser instead of routers. Now, I have not used this one. I have watched, I was at the Hallmark. I know this will sound crazy, but Hallmark Cards has an R&D division, and it is the coolest R&D division. There's a video somewhere. If you do Google, let's see, what was it? Google Classroom. We did a stream from there, and we streamed the interviews with them, and they wandered through it. But they've got a row of 3D printers. They've got all this circuitry. They've got this laser cutter. I know you'd never think that Hallmark would have this, but it is because they have to build those little, the little cards that open that do something. They have to figure out how to do that reliably for 3 cents a card. It's a thing. And so they have these electrical engineers and mechanical engineers figuring all of this stuff out all the time. And so we saw a laser printer that was a very big version of this, and I really felt like I needed one, but I haven't been able to find a job to pay for it yet. But they're really cool.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, laser engraving and cutting of thin materials up to, I think, 16th inch plywood or something. I toyed with the idea of getting one, but then I researched a little more and realized you have to port the smoke, because a lot of things that you cut give off toxic fumes. And it has a charcoal filter in it, but you have to go through all kinds of filtration and have some place to vent the smoke to outside the building. Because it can stink up your whole house. So I voted against it because for that particular problem, although it looks really cool.
Chris Fenwick?
Alex, I think you need to register the term crafty laser. It needs a copyright on that.
Yes.
Ooh, Alex?
Yeah, and by the way, if you want to see the Hallmark one, this is the tour we did many, many years ago in Hangouts, actually, so that people could ask questions. But this is the Maker Camp Field Trip 2013, so you can see 12 years ago. And we kind of wander through. There's the cutter right there, actually. I believe that's the cutter, but it cuts a lot. But there's a tour of it, and then also it's kind of a step-by-step where they're building some of the circuits and so on and so forth. It's a little low res, and it was all through Hangouts back then, but I would highly recommend checking it out if you want to see some of what the R&D division looks like at Hallmark.
Next question.
Next one comes in all the way from Auckland, New Zealand, with Peter Moore asking the question. I was impressed by my old Apple TV4, also known as HD, as it qualifies for tvOS 26. It looks sharp. I went into the audio settings, and now it's still stereo, or 5.1. I'm assuming there is a hardware limitation of the device and not what it's connected to. Questions?
Alex, can you help him out?
Yeah, I think that's the assumption that it has based on what it's plugged into. So it should be capable of your HD. I don't know how many years back. There's typically 3 or 4 generations that have the full reliability, full support. So you may be a little older than that, which would leave it at it might have the new OS, but it might be not able to process any more than 5.1. But I think that even mine right now it's listed as 5.1, although it can deliver. It is delivering 7.1 to mine. So it may be also what it says in the label based on, because I can hear my back speakers doing something. So I'm just not sure whether it's doubling those 5.1 or whether it's actually 7.1, but I think it's 7.1. And I have the newest one that's been released in my system. But it doesn't list Atmos. I mean, it does read Atmos, and you may want to look at whether yours is reading Atmos, because it may still read Atmos, but not necessarily. It's going to have to fold it down to a smaller number of channels as it hands it to the amplifier.
Don't forget, we have some additional shows happening. Extra Hours takes place on Monday. Last night they did a great thing from the Apple keynote, or discuss the Apple keynote. On Thursday, The Rundown. David Paskin hosts a panel that takes a deep dive into the why behind the latest tech reshaping our world. And so keep your eyes on the website for additional information as these come up. Next question.
Next one comes in from Noonan, Georgia. Tony Mobley asks, there was a conversation on Office Hours about a newer OBS that was more reliable. What was the name of it?
Alex, do you remember this discussion?
I think we were just talking about the fact that it has gotten more reliable on the Mac. I think it's just the latest version of it that has been, less crashy than on the Mac than it has been in the past. And now I admit that I'm using OBS for some specific tests that I need to get 120 frames per second out of a M4 Mac Mini, and it's the easiest way to load different videos quickly and do that. It's actually capable of doing 120 frames per second. So that's what I'm using it for. It's not crashing at all, but the mission that I'm giving it is very, very specific. Jack says Meld Studio. So I guess Meld Studio sits on top of it. I'll let Guy run with that.
Guy?
Yeah, that's the same thing I was about ready to mention. I missed the conversation, but I'm guessing it was Meld Studio. Basically, it's OBS with a bunch of, you could do a lot of the things that you could do in OBS with plugins and with scripts and things like that. What Meld does is it allows you to have all these different things that fire off easily, kind of like Ecamm, where you have things that can fly around, or chat that you can pull in, templates, that kind of thing, but you will have to pay for it. So Meld's not free, but I wouldn't say it's more reliable. It's just that it makes certain things easier. But OBS on the PC side is super stable. On the Mac side, I've kind of shied away from it unless it's a single use activity that's pretty simple, but it seems to be getting better and better.
Why do I want to have some of those little explosion graphic stickers made up that says, now less crashy? I think I could use those in my life. Next question.
Next one comes in from Michael Boydnott in Richmond, Virginia. Alex recently mentioned cable length limitations for Blackmagic design gear. How do you mitigate this if you need a 200-foot run?
Courtney Gooden's going to help you out. Courtney?
Well, you convert it to SDI, and you run it over SDI, which is plenty good up to about 300 feet. So 200 feet is great for SDI. Convert it from HDMI to SDI at the camera, and then convert it back if you need HDMI at the other end. Otherwise, get you a monitor or whatever you're feeding, a switcher, whatever you're feeding into, that accepts SDI. And it should work fine, at least for the, I guess for the 4K, 6K, yeah, you're going to have higher speed SDI, but you'll have to have high speed converters for that. But for standard 1.5 gigahertz or 3 gigabit, standard SDI cable should work great over that length.
Alex Lindsay.
I have we've had some issues running over 150 feet. There's less correctors in some of the Blackmagic stuff, which is why it's a little less expensive. But so we don't run anything over 150 feet. We convert to fiber pretty quickly. So and we find that to be generally useful across the board. So anything over 150 feet, we typically we might stretch to 180 feet, but that's about it. And after that, we're going to move to fiber, and we found that everything works better that way. I think that there are limitations to, there is an upside to being able to have a lot of hardware that's affordable, and we were able to own it. And I have used Blackmagic gear to take lots and lots of work, millions and millions, tens of millions of dollars away from other people because they were using older, quote unquote, more reliable stuff, and I slipped under it with the budget because I was able to own the gear. So it's been very effective, but you have to know what the limitations are and work inside of those.
Next question.
Next one comes in from Austin, Texas. Paul Valhus asks, lots of new stuff in Sidus Link Pro 2.0, which is the company, which in the company's own words, aims to put all the power of a modern lighting console into your iPad without the complexity, menu driving, or manual reading. Comments?
Alex, do you have comments?
This is Aperture's software. So they've got a couple different ones. So they've got the Mobile, the Pro Max for different subscription prices. And so they go up to about $20 a month for these. And I haven't gotten a chance to play with them yet. So I've been using Luminaire, which is the one that I use for that type of thing. But it does look like it's kind of built. It's kind of built for people who want to run their Aperture lights, but also interact with other lights as well. As Mickey said, folks that believe this has not worked. Generally, when people say this is the best thing and it's going to replace all the other things, they don't have a lot of experience with the real thing. So I don't think this is going to replace your Grand MA or ETC board anytime soon. But it doesn't mean that it's not really useful for a lot of people with their home studios. So they might be a little aspirational, thinking they're going to run the next theater event with their Sidus Pro, but can they actually do a great job of running what they have in their office? 100%. And so that's what it's probably much. They should say it that way, but they want the kids to think that they're just like the big guys. So that's part of the marketing.
Next question.
Next question comes in from Roscoe Jones, who's at the Louisville baseball ticket office right now, so get your tickets in. Are there any decisions you made in your career that you have thought about for a long time? And where have you found the best advice regarding your career in media production?
Courtney Gooden.
Well, I think the best advice is to look for something that is fairly vertical market and not a lot of other people are doing if you're looking for a career. And I've always been able to do that many times. I found that starting off as a sound mixer, then everybody wanted to be a DP. So, hey, I'll do sound. So it's a less crowded field. You have less competition to compete with. And then I went into another vertical market after that. But be prepared to pivot, because with technological advances, you never know if you're in one of those vertical market careers that not too many people are doing and not too many people know how to do. Then you got to be prepared to pivot, because your job could be eliminated by a technical advance. It's happened to me, 2 or 3 times. I had to change careers and sometimes invent a technical advancement that would keep me at the head of the crowd for a while. But as always, technology marches on, and anybody's job can be eliminated almost overnight. And you'll find sometimes that the jobs which were very lucrative for a very long time suddenly are now, worthless. So be prepared to pivot, have a backup plan to go to something else that you've been working on that hopefully won't be eliminated by a technological advance.
Alex?
Yeah, I think that a couple of things that have been told me, I can't say that I follow my nose. I have to admit that I just kind of go, oh, that looks cool, and I'm just going to go down that path, and I wander down that path, and somehow I end up in a pretty good place many times, but it's mostly because I'm interested in something that I'm trying to dig up. And I think that what's important there is I'm always interested in something that I'm trying to figure out that hasn't been done before, and I'm interested in what that could do as far as a larger scheme of things. Probably the two best points advice that I got is I remember I was working on a shot for Star Wars that I had been working on for 9 weeks. It's a shot of the Queen ship going over Coruscant. If you watch the trailer, you can see it. It's 236 frames, which was a lot back then. And I was, really almost close to a nervous breakdown, because I was 4 weeks over schedule, trying to get all the little bits right. And every time there was something else that needed to be fixed. And I remember walking out of C Theater and John Knoll, you could see how stressed I was. And he just looked at me and he said, just remember, this isn't heart surgery. It was just just remember that what you're doing isn't, you don't have to be that stressed about it. And I think about that all the time. I get into something where I start to feel my body get stressed about what I'm working on, and I'll start to feel that stress, and then something will click, and I'll just go, it's not heart surgery. Just figure it out. Just do the best you can, figure this out, and take the lessons and move forward. I think that the other thing that that from a presentation perspective is I walked into Tech TV and I'd never done a show before, and this is my first time on the show, and I looked over at an intern who had been on the show for a while, named Kevin Rose, and I said, "Do you have any advice? Like, I've never done this before." And he goes, "Just be yourself, plus 25%," and it's the right thing. Like when you're on air, just being yourself, plus a little bit more. You just talk a little bit louder. You do a little bit more emoting than you do regularly, and it just comes across as natural. If you do more than that, then it feels bad. If you do less than that, it feels flat. And so it was just those are the two things that I probably look back on. They're things that come up often in my head of advice that I probably lean back into.
For me, just recently, one of the biggest decisions I've ever made has to do with platforming my next endeavor, because I've been working in these audiobooks, and there's so many options now. I mean, I'm on Zoom here every day, and I understand the Zoom platform. I understand that there are a lot of editing platforms or live streaming platforms. We've got people here who know Mimo Live and all the rest of those. Then there's this problem of, where can I build the community that I need for this? Because I'm right now auditioning actors to do some of these parts, and I'm substituting them in. Where am I going to put the whole community conversation? Am I going to do Discord? We're right now doing this on Zoom, but there's a robust Discord on the side. How many extra arms do I want to try to manage? And is there one platform that I can find now, or that's developing, or that I think has the future for this? And to me, this has been something that I've been struggling with for about 2 months now. And I think I'll go on for a while. And it has to do with the fact that this whole online media thing is just very complex. There's a lot of competing things for your attention, and trying to figure out, I don't think I'm going to be able to find the perfect one. I think I'm going to be able to find something good and hope I don't have to change for a few years as I build this out. But boy, it is daunting. There's a lot to think about in the complexity of modern production. Guy, dive in.
Yeah, I'd say having to fire people. I mean, one of the decisions I had to make was based on a lot of coaching from these high-dollar coaches that I would pay for and listen to their advice and what worked for them in their field and in their industry, because they're much older people that have gone through their entire career. Now they're coaches. You take all this information, but take it with a grain of salt, because one of the things that I've gone to reflect on over the last few years is some of the people that, it's the Peter principle, where they were great technicians and then they grew into management, but they were not good managers of people. So just that's just one of the biggest lessons, is having to either let them self-eject or having to actually, give them the papers and you're out of here. The other one, where's the best place to regarding the career in media production? I'd say right here. I mean, Alex with his pace, primary, alternative, contingency, and emergency, that's gone in the back of my mind a couple times for gigs where had I not been thinking that way when the primary went down, I didn't have 2 more or 3 more methods to go to. I at least like to have 1 more, but having 4 total is pretty amazing. So it's just a mindset. So just paying attention here. I mean, that's why I have a little bit of FOMO on Sundays because I go to church and do media production there. But church starts at 9 a.m., so I miss it. And I'm always like, dang it, what am I missing? Because there's such great information that comes out here. And during the week, we can rewatch it, but on the weekend, we don't get that opportunity.
Alex?
Yeah, the pace, by the way, it's not mine. I just want to make sure it's clear. That's a Navy SEAL thing that is there. And I had it's funny how you get trained in one thing and another. And when I was younger, I was trained in that methodology related to a pretty rough version of war games, or paintball. And we had to define what those things were every time we went out. So it was what our primary, alternate, contingency, emergency was. Every single time we went out, we had to define that first, and then we would go do that. And it just had nothing to do with media production, but it definitely stuck with me of how to think about those things. And the other thing that was constantly repeated over and over again is amateurs. This is again General Omar Bradley. Amateurs talk about strategy. Professionals talk about logistics, and you just constantly think about those processes. The one thing I will say from my advice that this system is all, like all of office hours and everything else is all built around, is that number one is I'm constant, I can't even say that I was trying to think of like every 3 or 4 years I change what I'm doing. For me, I change so often that it's a gradient. Like there's just all these things that are happening that are all kind of moving forward, but I'm constantly bouncing between different things. I don't really have a thing that I do. There are a group of things that I do, and the cloud keeps on moving forward, but it's not like and they're all kind of interconnected to each other. So they're all informing each other, but it's not. And the one thing that I would say is that I have very little, I worry a lot about as soon as someone external is touching it, I worry very, very hard about taking care of them, like taking care of whatever that is. I mean, I volunteered for my daughter's, she's in a rock band and they have all the rock bands for the high school and they needed somebody to record the video and I volunteered. It's free. And I spent a lot of time making sure that works. Like I'm not going to, you just don't want to let anybody down. Like, and so you really, when you make promises there, at the same time, I'm very aggressive about taking on new technologies, whether it's AI or new cameras or my whole life, I've just been like, oh, there's a new thing because I'm not connected to what I'm doing. I'm connected to creating, and I'll use any tool in front of me that allows me to create faster, and create more effectively. And so I just look at everything as tools because I'm not connected to the tool. I am connected to the end product, right? And so if I can produce a better end product, I'll just grab onto whatever tools I can and kind of clip them through. But the most important thing of all of those discussions is really more of a Sunday discussion, but we'll have it today because we got time, is that it is all about who you know. It's all about who you know. Like you if you think that you can just be in your corner and do it, if you're very, very good, like top 0.1%, top 0.001%, you might be able to ignore people and just do your thing, and you might be able to succeed. But as soon as the ground comes out from under you, as soon as AI comes up, as soon as a technology makes you obsolete, there's nowhere to go. There's nowhere for you to go, because you don't have any connections to the rest of your community. And so it is the most important thing. And the way that you do that is you help everyone around you, and you can do that at mass. The way I started 35 years ago was that I show up at, I would show up at user groups and I would show things about Photoshop that I had learned the week before. I wrote articles for magazines where I didn't get paid because I was interested in it and I thought people should know about it. I kept on showing up. I was on online forums all through the 90s. And I mean, pretty much I've been on some kind of online forum, ours now, for, the last 35 years, trying to help other people do those things, people who are in front of me, people who are behind me in development, people that are around me in development, and you just constantly try to help people. And here's the one thing that I'll say that most people make a mistake of is never, ever say you never, ever tell someone that they owe you something, ever. Like you will erase all of the karma that you did like that. Like there's never a string. You help people, and then you make requests, and they decide whether to fulfill those requests. But no one ever owes you anything. The reason you're doing it is for the process of doing it, and I don't know. Like when I go into something and decide I'm going to inject value into something, like to try to help other people, I don't know what's going to come out on the other end. But it's happened so reliably over 3 decades that I know something will. I just know, I have faith that if I keep on serving the market that I'm in, serving people around me, and taking care of people, that it sorts itself out. And it's very hard for people because people become very transactional, and people who are transactional are at the whims of the weather, and you just have to be very careful about that because you really want to be thinking about how to be relational and how to be connected. And that's why a lot of the stuff here is the panelists are serving the market, serving our everyone around us. The volunteers are serving, the being in Discord or being, all the things that we do here are connecting us to a society, that when things get rough, help protect us.
Guy Cochran?
Yeah, I was going to say that I realized that that pace came from the Navy SEALs, but the point is that the culmination of all the knowledge here, I look at who's on the panel, and I mean, it's just like, wow, there's decades of experience here just packed into this small group, and being able to share that knowledge is just terrific. And then jumping in and doing things like we did the Cinegear live the other day, and just seeing this shot with like the crane and there's little things like this that unless you go out there and do it, we just did this for free. This is just office hours. We're just having fun, but it still put the pressure because I had the SRT feed coming in here, and then I was injecting that into after hours, and there was some little hiccups that happened that I was like, oh, I'm glad that I shake this out. It was the VBix integration with Zoom on a registered event, and I was like, oh, that's unique. In all my testing and my meetings, it worked flawlessly. So at the last hour before the show, I was having to finagle with a different routing method, which messed up the audio, which then I was kind of, starting to get those shakes of like, okay, we're going live in 49 minutes and I'm rerouting all this audio through Discord and so performing a mix minus. So there's little things like that where volunteer, help out, because when the real productions happen, you've already gone through some of those motions that help save your bacon.
Chris Fenwick.
I'm going to give you the briefest version of this story. In the earliest years of my career, I just traveled to places and pushed other people's, operated other people's equipment. In the early 90s, I was having a conversation with my dad, and I was on the verge of buying some equipment, and I had never owned any equipment. And over the course of, a minute, my dad went through, I expressed my concerns. My dad asked me a handful of questions, and it basically was just a cost analysis. How much can you make? What's it going to cost you? And when my dad saw that the amount of money that was going to be made every month was less than the amount of money I was going to spend every month if I bought this equipment, he just looked at me very matter-of-factly and he says, why are we having this conversation? It was like, I could make this much, but it's going to cost me this much. And I was like, why are we having this conversation? And the way that he removed because I was very emotional about getting into debt and this thing, and the way he removed the emotion from the decision, the finances of it, it made a lot of sense. Now, I will say, and it absolutely changed my career. That discussion, standing in the driveway that day, changed the course of my career immediately. I will say, I'm a little bit different about debt today. I'm very adverse to, being in debt. But that moment and that trusting of my father at the time completely changed my life. And I'll never, ever forget that advice he gave me.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, I was just going to say, for longevity, if you want a long career in the industry, is pick a rung on the ladder to success and stay on that rung. Because, this industry is filled with people. There are people who work their way up, let's say from a PA to a second assistant director to a first assistant director, and everybody wants to direct. So as you work your way up that ladder to success to become a director, you could become a very successful director, and you could wash out and no one ever hire you again once you make the transition to director. But I know a lot of people that stayed at that assistant director and they just became very, very good at that one rung on the ladder to success. You'll see other people pass you and go on to great success and flame out tragically. But a lot of times, if you're very good at that one thing that's on that ladder to success and you stay on that rung, you'll have a long career because everyone will know how great a job you did, because a lot of people just pass over that rung on their way up the ladder and don't do that intermediate job very well. There's a lot of assistant cameramen that were great at their job. They never went on to camera operator. They never went on to DP. They were some of the best first assistant cameramen, focus pullers out there, and they were always fully employed, and they get paid quite well.
Alex?
And this is what Sunday looks like. So we went ahead and answered this one. But if you're wondering what Sunday looks like, this is what all of Sunday looks like. So if you haven't ever seen our Sunday shows, I would recommend checking it out.
Don't forget, if you have questions you want to put on the show, there's an alternate way. That's just type in askofficehours.global into your web browser. I'll toss up the QR code if you want to take a picture of that or something like that. That's all you have to do. Shoot that code or type in askofficehours.global and you'll get into the system. Next question.
Next one comes in from Douglas Carmichael, and he says, what does everyone think about YouTube pulling back on content moderation? And he has a link to an Ars Technica article.
Yeah. Courtney, you raised your hand. What do you think?
Well, here in America, and YouTube is an American company, although they have global presence, I think it's kind of dangerous. I think they're still going to have to do some degree of content moderation without getting too political. I think they should still moderate things like, how to build explosives or anything that could be dangerous to, mankind should be taken off of the subject. Here in America, we have our First Amendment rights and free speech. And the other danger is, the algorithm automatically silos you. So if there isn't very much content moderation, you may not see the content that you're not interested in or you don't believe in anyway, because the algorithm will prevent it from ever surfacing in your YouTube feed. So it kind of moderates itself to some degree, but then it also silos you. You don't get a full perspective across, all different people's opinions because not because of content moderation, but because of the algorithm that serves up just what you want to see. So it can be dangerous, like I say, without content moderation, with false information spreading around. And now that there is AI that can generate all types of propaganda, I think it could be kind of dangerous.
Next question.
Next one comes in from Robert Green in Los Angeles, California. A digital U.S. passport for domestic travel ID at airports coming to the iPhone this fall. Would you use this and or other official state IDs in your phone?
Alex.
You can put it in your phone, but I would keep the paper. So I wouldn't go to anything expecting someone is absolutely going to use it, but it might be a little bit more convenient than pulling your wallet out.
Yeah, my Arizona ID is my California ID is in my phone now. Next question.
Yeah, me too. Dave Troutman in Edmonton, Canada says, are we excited to be able to natively play 360 or 180 video in Vision Pro in the next release?
Alex, what do you think?
I'm excited about it. I have to see what the limitations are. So one of my big questions that I still haven't been able to look through all the videos yet, is really seeing whether I'm going to get the dual eye from the Canons or whether it's only single eye. So we'll do some more research. Ask me in a week, because I'll be trying to make it work pretty soon.
Ooh, next one's pretty exciting. Next question.
Ooh, exciting. From Jonas Duttel in Stuttgart, Germany, says there is now an official Zoom plugin for the Streamdeck that uses direct hooks into Zoom, and in my testing works quite good. Will they finally fix the auto mute in Zoom?
I think we all respect Jonas's technical chops, and if he likes this, it must be pretty solid. Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, so this is different than just doing keystrokes. So this is a direct tie-in to, so what this finally gives you is it is actually talking directly to Zoom. So mute, unmute, video on and off, all of those things. So it's no longer trying to get a keystroke, and whether it's global or not global, all those things go away. So if you are using Zoom, and you may have a lot of other stuff set up in Companion that maybe you keep using or whatever, but if you're using a Streamdeck and you have Zoom and you want to be able to tie those together, and you have been using keystrokes, this is going to be much more stable, much more reliable than what you had before. So I'd highly recommend it.
I'm pretty excited because after having all my mute issues, if I can get a Zoom mute that not only does the muting, but shows me the state of the mute on a Streamdeck, I'll be delighted.
Yeah, it is delivering states back as well, so it knows
excellent.
Where it's at.
Oh, man. Okay. Looks like there's a change coming in my system. Chris Fenwick, you wanted to weigh in on this?
Well, what year is it right now? Because I thought we've had this for like 3 or 4 years. No. And it's not keystrokes. It's not remember this keystroke, do this keystroke, talk to the thing. There's been a Zoom tool for Streamdeck. I'm using it right now. I've been using it for 4 years.
I don't think anything has been talking directly to Zoom, like through, so this is the most
to
direct.
Their API.
Yeah. So this is directly connected to it. It'll be more stable.
I imagine a lot of us are going to be trying this out pretty quick. So we'll see. We'll report back as we learn more.
It's valuable at twice the cost.
Maybe 100 times the cost.
Yeah, exactly.
Next question.
Next one comes in from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. He says the Tony Awards and red carpet Sunday night were rife with audio and video glitches. Did anyone see this?
Courtney Gooden.
I did. I watched the first. I did see one audio glitch. I didn't watch the red carpet, but the first presenters that came out, I think, well, I don't know if it was the first, but Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, came out to present, I think, one of the first awards, and Keanu Reeves' wireless suddenly went dead in the middle of announcing, before they introduced the nominees. They quickly brought up the, rising mic that comes up out of the stage to try and cover it, but then they didn't go to it until, I think maybe they can't go to it until it gets all the way up. But anyway, there was an audio glitch there that I heard that wasn't too horrible. But considering all the live musical stuff that went on there, I thought it was actually pretty well produced. And I listened in 5.1 on my big stereo, and it sounded very nice.
Alex?
Especially the Tony Awards, it's a remarkable amount of RF because of the number of mics that they're using and how they put it together. It's a very, very complicated show, so that's there. And then, of course, obviously something changed. Usually when you see this means that they changed a production company or a group that did it that doesn't know how complicated it is and got themselves underwater. That's what we see. When we see a lot of glitches that haven't been in a show before, it usually means there's a new team that got brought in. And it's why people are so resistant to changing teams, is because once the team kind of knows the nature of what the challenges are, even if they're not perfect, a production company will hesitate to, from getting rid of them because they know where all the sharp edges are, and new production companies oftentimes, or new vendors oftentimes don't, and they get caught up in. That's what you end up with.
Courtney, you want to pop back?
I did notice one thing that was curious in a reverse shot that they just got on camera very briefly. Is what I noticed is the orchestra wasn't in the orchestra pit or in the back of the theater. They were at Radio City Music Hall. I don't know where they stuffed the orchestra, maybe in another building somewhere. But there was a large screen TV underneath the teleprompter that had the conductor on it, so that all the live performances that were taking place on stage could see the conductor of the orchestra. And, of course, they were hearing through monitor speakers or through in-ear monitors on the stage. But they could see them cue the orchestra and do the downbeats and keep everybody together in sync. And it's fairly important to see the conductor. And that way they could see the conductor via video link. That was interesting.
Yeah, the two shows I always try to pay attention to are the Tonys and the Grammys, because they feature a lot of live performances. I mean, unlike the Academy Awards where they roll in clips and things like that, these are actual musicians and singers performing live. And so I think that it is a bit, as Alex said, of kind of a high wire. You have to know what you're doing to be able to play in that venue. And I often enjoy that more for that reason. Next question.
Next one comes in from Brody Hefner in New York City. iPadOS 26 announced at WWDC includes improved management of files. What do you know? Windows and audio. Might these changes make iPad more useful as a media production tool?
Alex, what do you think?
It's getting a lot closer to being a Mac. I think that there's a point where more of us will use a lot of those things as we kind of I think that I try to use the iPad as often as I can, just because I find it more convenient than my Mac. And so I think that Apple took a huge leap forward of moving the iPad towards the Mac OS. So I think we'll probably see another leap forward. I think if you're using an Air, I don't think it affects the MacBook Pros, but if you're using a MacBook Air, 2 years from now, it's going to be really complicated to decide which one you want. They'll still make probably both of them. But you're really going to have to. The iPad has so many advantages, and if it gets a little closer to the Mac, it'll probably eat into that Air market. I think Apple sees a huge Air market. That they sell a lot of those Airs, and they see that, and there's an opportunity for them to convert folks to the iPad, which I think Apple would prefer.
Yeah, it used to be that I always thought of the iPad as a content consumption device and Macs and laptops as content creation devices, at least for me. I think that is blurring primarily because they both have those M4 series chips in there that are so incredibly capable that they figured out they can do both.
Well, I think that
each
part of it is that they don't want to adding touch to the old operating system is too difficult. I mean, I have a touch screen here, so I get to experience what it's like. It's not a good experience, and instead of trying to figure that out, they're just slowly bringing the iPad up to a point where you have the touch experience, but you also have the keyboard and mouse and everything else.
Yeah, so many people are using iPads as controllers, and we have many of them on our panel, that it's a change. Next question.
Next question comes in from Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia. I am using iPadOS 26 on an M1 iPad Pro. Any recommendations for testing? It looks amazing.
Alex Lindsay?
Just use it. See how it looks. I mean, it's going to be early on. It's probably going to be pretty rough in some places. And I'm going to put it on one of my iPads, probably not both of them, and to play with it. But I think the best thing to do is just to fiddle with it and see how you're going to, see where the edges are of what they've done so far. It should change a lot over the next 4 months.
Let's go to the next question.
From Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. Did you see any Worldwide Developer Conference watch parties or communities reviews that are technical enough for the advanced pro media minds of office hours?
Chris Fenwick.
I was hoping Alex was going to talk about WWDC today. Alex, last night on the show you did last night, you mentioned something about a location or a set. It didn't look like it was composited right. I missed what set you were talking about.
It's not a set. So there's I'm told, and I haven't seen it, but there is this is the ring, and then up here is the Steve Jobs Theater, and I guess that there's another building here that has been built more recently over on this side, which is where a lot of their announcements kind of come from there. And it is a physical place, but I'm not clear they're shooting it in that physical place. And one of the problems with a lot of the spaces, whether you're shooting in the Steve Jobs Theater upstairs, the upstairs part of Steve Jobs Theater, or if you're shooting in some of the other places, they're not built for audio. And so the audio is, would be really messy. And they do a lot of all these funny moves and everything else that get really technically difficult if you try to do them in the actual place. And so, and I don't know what the truth is. It felt, for me, either that they were doing some weird exposure thing. So they could have been doing power windows or something and done an exposure issue to try, because if you show that window in the background, it's way too bright for the foreground person.
You're talking about where Craig was when he's upstairs at the Steve Jobs Theater?
Well, that, or with all of them, getting that exposure right, what I don't see is a ton of light. What I see is them looking very diffuse. And it just felt like it was it just didn't feel like those things. It didn't feel like the folks talking were standing where they were. They were comped well. The math kind of worked, but there was something about them. I felt like their edges were too clean. I felt like the exposure didn't match what they were standing in, and maybe they were, and they just did so much work to it when they were there. It didn't work, but it felt like they were shooting. They've been producing these on iPhones. It felt like they were shooting green screen on an iPhone and comping it in to a lot of those pieces. I didn't feel like they just didn't feel like they were there, so I felt like there was something wrong. And I don't know what it is. I don't know what the background is of it, but it didn't feel right to me, and it just felt and I felt like also all these wide shots are very old fashioned. Like these.
I heard you say that. I totally agree.
I just feel like why are we and I just need them to stop. I guess I don't need anything, but I would like
Listen, Mr. Cook, I need you to do this.
If I was king of the world, I would just have people stop doing all the stage stuff and just, or even like a prelude to it, like this idea. It's like a nod to they're on stage, but now the stage can be anywhere. I know that that's probably the internal conversation, but I just would say that I just think that they should make a great movie for 2 hours to tell us about what's going on, and stop trying to make it feel like a keynote. And I feel like we're in this weird, I guess I would say the uncanny valley of keynotes where we're no longer on a stage, but we're trying to be on a stage. Just give it up. Make me a great movie that entertains me for 2 hours, and then we'll go from there.
I think they have so much momentum with their, shot selection and standing next to a big screen that it's really just hard to break away from that. What is the new metaphor to show a person and some data at the same time, if not a person standing in front of a big giant screen? Is it possible that the compositing that you're seeing that you're uncomfortable with, or possible compositing, edging, is it possible that it is the internal fancy that the iPhone does, where it's trying to say, let's fix this?
It could be
exposure, and possible that the reason you're not recognizing it, this is actually kind of exciting, is because they're using a more advanced, experimental, beta testing new phone processing.
It could be. I just feel I actually feel there was a point where I kept on feeling from the beginning when they started doing these in 2020, I felt like every one of these keynotes was getting better than the last one, and they were cooler than the last one, and they were doing more things than the last one. And I think this might be the first one where I felt like they might have been not as good as the last one. I just felt like it was there was something that they were trying too hard or doing something, but it just didn't feel like they were in that improvement. When they say it's best ever, this is an example where I was like, maybe not, maybe not the best ever. And admittedly, WWDC has we'll have to really to decide where they're going with it. WWDC is not the big keynote, right? So the iPhone is the big keynote in September. So that's probably going to be much zanier and much bigger and so on and so forth. But I do think that this construct of the construct of doing it on stage or whatever. And that said, the production values, for instance, with Google I/O were the best they've ever seen. That little white thing that they stood on to give them uplighting, and there's all the stuff. It was the best I ever seen, and it was unwatchable for me. It was just unwatchable. It was so slow that I skipped through the 12-minute highlight reel. It's like I was like, okay. And let alone actually the actual 2-hour version was just, it's the speed of which this once you get used to a movie, the speed of these keynotes is just unbearable, and so I think that's the problem. Is I think Steve Jobs created the keynote thing because he was Steve Jobs, and we keep on thinking that everyone can be Steve Jobs, and they can't, and they can't, and most of the talent, most of the C-suite cannot present in a way that we want to watch, and we keep on wanting to put them up there, and it just isn't working, at this point. And I think that I think everybody has to give it up.
I think the wide framing is part because they want to make Apple Park a character. That's an advantage they have. They have this beautiful new facility. It's iconic. So I think they want to show it as much as possible. Courtney Gooden, thoughts?
Welcome to Short Attention Span Theater. I found that I listened on a big stereo system, and I found the audio too good for the shots that they were delivering. So I think the whole thing was shot on a green screen stage with a shiny floor, and composited later. And they've been making such a big deal out of everything shot on an iPhone to brag about the quality of the iPhone camera. They don't use also lighting. The shot that Guy Cochran has up here is to light that correctly, to light the person correctly and get the background.
This one here.
Yeah, to get the background balanced with the light on Craig Federici, whoever that is there. You wouldn't be able to get the lights in close enough to him to illuminate him, in that shot, or you'd have to have 8 billion watts of light coming from the front to light it evenly and balance the exposure between the background and the foreground without it blowing out. So everything was composited. Those are all virtual sets that were built in a computer years ago, a couple of years ago. And that's all they use for their backgrounds right now. And everybody sits on a green screen, and the mic is a very, very high quality microphone, like a Sennheiser 416, that's just above their head, that is matted out with a garbage mat. And they sound great when they're moving around with a microphone boom that follows them. So I think it almost sounds looped. It sounds so good. It would never sound that good in that hemispherical glass, a parabolic dome that they're standing in the middle of. So it's all virtual screens. And of course, they give that away when they do their fancy schmancy transitions from one speaker to the next speaker. But
we had a lot to say. My apologies to the crew. We've run a good little bit over, and I don't want to keep people too long. Thank you all for participating, and thanks to our normal constituencies, to our producers for the questions that we had all day today, for the panelists, for the back-end crew, everybody who makes this possible every day. Thank you, thank you, thank you. A collector verse today, 44,000 miles, 72,000 kilometers. That is 352 million bananas for scale. We'll see you all tomorrow.
Although they shot it on an iPhone, they had $20,000 worth of support gear that are holding that microphone.
Wouldn't you? If you had
iPhone, yes.
300 million.
Motion control, you know.
If your company was worth $300 billion or whatever the heck it is now, $3 billion.
Oh,
3 trillion.
3 trillion. That's right. What am I? Oh, silly me. I was off by 1,000 orders of magnitude. So, yeah.
It's all 30%, 30%.
Sorry we ran long to the back end crew. I was a little concerned about that because I know some people have to go and do other gigs.
By the way, now Apple can't charge their 27% on links to the outside world in app purchases.
Adios.